There was a man who was a lucid dreamer. He could control his dreams. One night he was dreaming that he was flying through the skies with a beautiful woman. They were both flying, soaring above the clouds, having the time of their lives. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he heard a blood-curdling scream. It was so realistic that he woke up in a cold sweat. His heart was pounding in his chest. He tried to calm himself down, telling himself it was just a dream, but he couldn't help but feel shaken. He tried to go back to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw the horrifying visage of the woman from his dream, her face twisted in a silent scream, her eyes wide with terror. He tossed and turned for what felt like hours, unable to find peace or comfort in the darkness. Just as he was beginning to lose hope of ever falling asleep again, he noticed something strange. In the corner of his room, what looked like a doorway had appeared. It wasn't there before, but now it was as clear as day. Curiosity got the better of him, and he walked towards it. As he approached, he could feel a strong pull, like a magnet, drawing him closer and closer. Before he knew it, he was standing on the other side of the door. He found himself in a dark and narrow corridor that seemed to stretch on forever. The air was heavy and stagnant, and he could feel a sense of dread and despair pressing down on him. He took a deep breath and tried to steady himself. He knew that this place, whatever it was connected to the nightmare he had just experienced, and he was determined to find out why. As he walked deeper into the corridor, he began to hear whispers. They were faint at first, but slowly they grew louder, morphing into screams and shouts. The walls on either side of him seemed to be closing in, and he could feel the darkness seeping into his bones. Then, suddenly, the whispers stopped. The silence was deafening, and he could feel his heart racing in his chest. That's when he saw it. At the end of the corridor, there was a light. It was faint, flickering, like a candle in the wind. But as he walked towards it, it grew brighter and brighter until he could see the source. It was a small opening in the wall, and through it, he could see a room. He hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. What would he find in that room? Was it the source of the nightmares he had been having? Slowly, he pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was small and dark, and he could barely make out the shape of the furniture in the shadows. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he began to see more clearly. He saw a bed in the corner, a nightstand next to it, and a door on the opposite wall. But it was the figure lying on the bed that really caught his attention. It was the woman from his dream. She was pale as death, her eyes wide and staring. He rushed her aside and knelt down beside the bed. He called out to her, his voice echoing in the small room, but she didn't respond. He could feel tears welling up in his eyes, but he blinked them away. He knew that this wasn't real. It was all a dream. He was a lucid dreamer! And this was just another one of his subconscious mind's creations. But still, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sorrow and pity for the woman. As he looked around the room, he noticed a journal on the bedside table. He opened it and began to read. The entries told the story of a woman who was being haunted by nightmares. Nightmares so vivid and terrifying that they bled into her waking life. He read about how she had tried everything to stop them, but nothing worked. And then he came across the last entry. It was written in a shaky hand and spoke of a doorway in the corner of her room. A doorway that led to somewhere else, somewhere dark and full of despair. He closed the journal and looked back at the woman in the bed. He realized that this wasn't just a dream. This was her nightmare. Somehow he had stumbled into her subconscious and found her deepest fears made manifest. And as he stood there, contemplating what to do next, he heard a voice behind him. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and comment. We'll see ya next time.